Want to make sure my face is on the re-edited version from now on. That's my only stipulation.
Hey!
Oh, we're back. That made me like bring back memories from January. That intro. Flip it out. We're back. Welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC full loaded transfer show. Summer transfer talk, and look, as the one season ends, the new season begins. As the players go off for the summer and have a bit of a holiday, this is when we get to work because we are back with plenty of transfers, plenty of news, lots and lots of different guests over the next 11 weeks or however long it is. But we'll be back on a regular basis to give you all the transfer stuff. It's a pleasure to be back, and I'm with main man, Mr. Dash Shocks. How you doing, fella?
All good, Pete. All good. Actually, not so good. Actually, a bit of breaking news. For you, Pete. And it's just like, look what happened. Breaking news. I'm not. You know what, Pete? I'm kind of absolutely devastated with this, really. But I don't know what I could do to cheer myself up here. Maybe.
Oh wow! He's gone for it.
We're back, baby. Fully loaded transfer show. All summer long. Champions League, baby. Enough of that.
Get it. Love it. Love it. Champions League summer transfer special. And of course, we've got a fantastic guest tonight. Love him or hate him. Referred to as Marmite just before we came on live. And always the very, very opinionated Mr. Sean Casey. So look, without further ado, Daz, should we bring him on?
Let's get him on. Here's Sean.
Hey. How are we, lads?
How are we?
Very good with yourselves?
Not too bad, not too bad. Great to have you on, as always. I keep forgetting how many times you've been on now. There's been a fair few. You must have a double hat-trick ball at least.
I'd say, let me think, top mid 5, 6, yeah, I'd say you're right, Jim.
Definitely a double hat-trick ball for sure. But
I'm surely due a gift or something, and yeah.
Wow.
I come on the show and all I do is I get abuse for a week afterwards. The sacrifices I make to get cheap fucking subscriptions.
A good point, Sean, to remind people, make sure you hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Get subscribed, because we've got a lot of content coming in the summer, so you're not going to want to miss that. But
nearly 300 in the chat right now. Click that like button, click the subscribe, and more importantly, get the questions in for Sean, because he's our guest tonight, and I can see them already flying through. So we're going to have a job to get through all of these tonight. But look, Sean, we have to start with the tweet. The tweet that came out. I saved it. This tweet that came out from yourself, from yours truly, talking about talks with Szoboszlai and a number of other players on there, which got a reaction from our good friend of the channel as well, Keith Downey, who referred to it as nonsense. Look, we're going to allow you the opportunity to have your say on this. So talk to us. Is it nonsense from what you think? What's your opinion on it all?
Well, it's a funny one, really, you know, because the tweet went out on, was it Friday? Like 24 hours later, he dug out the tweet and replied to it. You know, there was nothing really said in the tweet that hasn't kind of been covered for a while. You know, you look at it, like there's a lot of paid publications that you have to click and, you know, pay for subscription and whatever. They all covered virtually similar to what I said. And 24 hours later, he dug out some random Irish fella's tweet to go utter nonsense on it. It's a bit suspect, like, isn't it? You know, I don't think I've ever had any interaction with him. You know, and like, we're on Monday today, and at about 5 o'clock today, that utter nonsense was proven right by a Sky colleague, I suppose, Sky Germany. They've basically said that we've been in direct contact with his reps, so that utter nonsense is kind of a bit diluted already. So there's a bit of utter truth to the utter nonsense, you know. So where'd you go from there, you know? And that's only 48 hours later. So I think time will prove me right, you know. Szoboszlai.
Let's talk about him. Dominic Szoboszlai, the hot topic of conversation with all Newcastle United fans at the moment. And yes, if you haven't seen it tonight, Sky correspondent Philip Hines has said this is the update. There were talks between his agency, Dominic Szoboszlai's agency, and Newcastle United. Szoboszlai remains an internal transfer target of the Magpies, 70 million release clause. And salary would not be a problem. Also interesting, Maddison, and interestingly puts kill one deal possible, open end. So what that means is up to interpretation, but kind of backs up a lot of talk of certainly the first part of your tweet that there are talks going on there. I've just seen tonight, not long ago, another friend of the channel, Jordan Cronin, just put a story out with something similar that they reportedly are in talks with Dominic Szoboszlai. So you know,
sorry, Pete. So basically, I actually put out a similar tweet about 2 weeks ago. I'd say that we actually had direct talks with the reps. All was going well there. The release clause, it's not a release clause as you see with Ugarte at Lisbon at the moment, where they're telling Chelsea and PSG hit the release clause or walk away. With Leipzig, it's a gentleman's agreement. There is no official 70 million release clause there, you know, with a 61 million pound, you know, so they say 60 million. So basically what it is that for RB Leipzig, for them to get the best young players, they also have to be the best sellers, you know, because if you're not a good seller and if you trap players at a club, young players aren't going to want to play for your club because they're thinking, okay, if I go there, do well, they're going to price me out of a move to the next club. So Leipzig sell their model as a good stepping stone, you know. So basically what it is that it's 70 million in his contract, euro. That 70 million can be met with add-ons, you know, very much like, say, for example, you pay 30 million up front, 10 million if you qualify for Champions League next year, another 10 million if he gets X amount of appearances. So that 60 million pound becomes very diluted in that release clause. It's not a release clause as we would have seen it with other players in the past. With Iosi Perez, when he left, that was 30 million. You know, you have to guarantee that you were going to pay that 30 million to actually trigger the clause. So with this, it's a gentleman's agreement. So for people saying that, oh, no way that they'd pay 60 million for Szoboszlai, you have to remember we paid 44 million for Anthony Gordon, you know, and of that 44 million, there was a large chunk of that paid up front. From what I'm told with Szoboszlai is that there wouldn't be as the transfer wouldn't be as front heavy as the Gordon deal would be, and the repayments would be very favourable because, as I said, Leipzig, for them to be good buyers and for them to attract the best youth players, they also have to agree to be good sellers, and that's why they have a great corner of the market that they're getting in the best young talent and they're selling them for huge money, you know, for Szoboszlai. And I suppose to touch on the Maddison one as well, I suppose would have been pre the January transfer window, Pete, I would have got on to about Maddison, and we would have said, I said to her, I was like, keep an eye on Dominic Szoboszlai because I'm told that he's looked at now as the alternative to Maddison. That would have stemmed from, really, I suppose Spurs were doing well at the time, and they would have been saying it to Maddison's camp that, look, in the summer we'll go on Maddison priority target. You know, Manchester United are also saying, look, we have a bit of interest. Arsenal saying we have a bit of interest. Newcastle touch base on them. They're saying, look, you're not a priority from at the moment. If you can get a move to London and a move to Spurs, he'll take the move to Spurs. We moved on. We ramped up our scouting on Szoboszlai, a player that we actually watched first in 2019. Very close to signing for Liverpool in 2019, and they backed out of the deal last minute. So they would have walked like. So for us, really, we focused all our attentions on him, ramped up the scouting on him since December, really, and kind of all in on him from that sense, to bring him in, as an alternative to Maddison. Now, what has changed there recently is Spurs have dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah,
good.
Do they have the money to complete the deal? Does he have an appetite to go to Spurs when there's not even a manager there? You don't even know who's going to be playing for. His camp were also watching the Mason Mount. What's going on with Mason Mount. Will he end up at Man United? If he ends up at Man United, that rules them out. Where Arsenal or Liverpool didn't look for a Maddison and stuff like that. So he's holding his options open. What I got told is that Newcastle will meet with the Sabbath representatives. They'll put a package together of this is what we're going to pay for this, that, and the other, and they'll get a kind of pre-agreement. They'll reach out to Maddison's camp, see, is he interested? Is it a straight yes or no? And what I'm thinking is that Eddie Howe absolutely loves him, James Maddison. I think Eddie Howe would choose Maddison probably over nearly any player. So I think there'll be a question asked of James Maddison. Are you all in on Newcastle? Or are you hedging your bets for other clubs? If he says, I'm not all in on Newcastle, we'll go all in on Szoboszlai. If Maddison said he wants to come to Newcastle, we'll do the Maddison deal and they'll let Szoboszlai slide. The thinking there is that if they do get Maddison now, there's a very good likelihood that Szoboszlai won't move at all this summer. Realistically, he was looked at as a target for probably the 24 window, either be it January or the summer window. What the Champions League has done for us, nothing has changed, essentially, as in like financially what they're planning to do, the players that they're looking at. As I said, they're scouting Szoboszlai since 2019. These targets are not new targets. They're not like, oh, geez, we have to go up a notch and this wild scattergun approach like Chelsea done. The Champions League has allowed them to pull in one or two more targets that they can bring in a year earlier, or half a year earlier, or whichever like that. That's all that's changed. So from my point of view, I think there'll be a question asked of Maddison's camp. Do you want Newcastle or not? If he says no, I think they'll go all in on Szoboszlai.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting one for James Maddison, purely because he's now got a bigger family to consider. If anyone doesn't know, he's expecting twins. He's already got a little one already. So family is going to be a big seller in that. It's already been reported as well that he has been talking to Trippier on international duty about living in Newcastle or what it's like to play for the club. So are you of the mindset that Newcastle could potentially go for Maddison first and say, what's your situation? And then if he's on the fence or not quite sure what's happening, they then go
absolutely, yeah. That's it in a nutshell, basically. I think 100% because Maddison is definitely going to move this summer. I don't think many other clubs would have the appetite to actually do the Szoboszlai deal right now this summer. Liverpool really, really like him, and he likes the idea of playing for Liverpool. Liverpool have been in contact with him and his people for, as I said, maybe even pre-2019. Like back in 2018, 2019, he was nailed on as a Liverpool player. Like everybody thought he was going to be a Liverpool player. Financially, Liverpool probably just didn't have the package to put together at the time. Granted, he didn't go for a whole lot, but Liverpool kind of run a very tight ship. So yeah, from my perspective, I think they'd probably choose Maddison this window, but that wouldn't rule out Szoboszlai in another window. Again, if Maddison says, I'm hedging my bets, then fair enough, they'll go all in on Szoboszlai. You never know. If Maddison doesn't get that move and we do get Szoboszlai and we're late in the window and it's kind of like, Maddison's still available, let's get him in. It's there. The thing with Maddison as well is Maddison is already on Champions League wages. For us, we're not going to break our wage structure now. I'm told that the wage structure at the moment is about 120k, say roughly. They're going to extend that to about 150, 160, and that's the max that they'll go. That brings us, I suppose, to another part of the tweet, which is Declan Rice. Do I think Declan Rice will sign for Newcastle? No way. Can't see it happening for multiple factors, and there's always a but. Arsenal, for example, a lot of people saying to me, and if somebody I really trust, is the question with Arsenal, the question everybody's asking behind the scenes is, do Arsenal, pardon my French, have the balls to put 100 million down on a player? I genuinely don't think they do. I think they need to strengthen in so many areas.
Yeah.
If they're losing Xhaka, losing Partey, They probably need 2 midfielders. They need a left back. They definitely need a centre back because Holden is terrible and Gabriel Mangelas is absolutely dreadful as well. You know, I thought he was actually worse than Holden, and he still got into the team. You know, they have a lot. They'll need a striker. You know, Gabriel Jesus has proven he won't get the goals. You can't rely on your wingers like Sasaka and Martinelli to constantly get double figures, so they're going to need a striker as well. Their squad needs a bit of an overhaul. You know, you can't bank on these young players as well to be sustainable. So, do they go out and 100 million on Rice? West Ham will be very hard sellers as well on the deal. Huge wages. You know, so when I say play the long game on Declan Rice, I've been like, what I've got is that if Arsenal can't do the deal, Manchester United don't really have the money. You know, Chelsea are looking at Ugarte and Caicedo first. Where does he go then? You know, and you're late in August, he hasn't got his move. Do Newcastle offer him something that was suggested to me as a progression contract?
What's you come in, tonight, Sean, just to interrupt you. What's come out tonight is that apparently Bayern Munich are interested in Declan, and spoke to Thomas Tuchel.
Declan Rice.
So look,
interested in.
But like, there's a lot of people behind the scenes saying that Munich don't have money either. You know, that they can't go all in. The thing about it as well is with Declan Rice is that if it comes to late August and he hasn't got his move, and if Newcastle say, yeah, we'll pay the money. Remember, we paid 67 million for Isaac. Yeah. You know, it's not a bigger stretch to go all in on Declan Rice. And we said to him, okay, here's 150 grand, 160 grand starting off. As the club progresses, our wage ceiling is going to get better, and you will continue to move with the wage ceiling. So you'll be on 160 grand this year. If you say 200 next year, 200 odd the year afterwards, then you give him something to think about. So that's what I'm saying, the long game. Can I see it happening? Probably not. But if he's still in West Ham in early August, there's a question there to be asked.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to rewind back a little bit because you did touch on this man a little bit. I'm personally not a fan. That's just me. But there have been some links with Mason Mount. You did touch on him a little bit. At Newcastle, in your opinion, are they really interested? And would you look to sign him?
The kind of phrase used against me recently, utter nonsense. So no, I heard there's absolutely nothing in it. Sure, like Chelsea won't pay his wages. We're definitely not going to do it.
No. It's definitely sorry. Go on.
Yeah. No, because I'm just watching. There's already 35 questions in the chat. You'll be glad to hear. But and 500 people watching. And make sure you hit that like button. I know Lisa's on the case as well in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe too. But Sean, rolling back to Maddison, and I was going to say Paqueta there, and Szoboszlai.
You had to get in there, didn't you?
There was a Paqueta question.
It was in my head.
You have a bet between you. How many times can you mention Paqueta in the show?
We should do that, Pete, sometime. Next time. But no. If you had a straight choice of who you would think Newcastle will bring, Maddison or Szoboszlai, who do you think?
Szoboszlai for where we are right now.
Yeah, cool.
I think that for us, what we need players who can play in multiple positions because Eddie Howe won't bring in wholesale changes.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing, there's probably 4 players for the first team and 3 kind of for the underbelly. When you talk about 3 for the underbelly, you kind of think of the likes of a Matheus Franca, these kind of players that they'll get in, they'll assess them, and maybe it's a loan or maybe thinks, he can be good enough to be around the bench and stuff like that, like so in FA Cup and all this kind of stuff, and he can come on and make an impact. So for me, Szoboszlai can play left wing, right wing, and either side of the midfield on it as an 8, and he's an absolute workhorse. Like something that if you haven't watched him play, something that you wouldn't pick up is that his work off the ball is fantastic as well. If you were to describe probably the perfect Eddie Howe player and what we need now, and from what I'm getting from people is that they want over 6 foot athlete, preferably play off both feet if they can. He ticks all the boxes. He's the player that's ready to kind of push to the next level. So for me, if I was to pick 2 players, I'd probably say Szoboszlai and Kephren Thuram. news that I broke probably, Jesus, when was that? That was back last May, June. You know, it was before anybody even heard of him. And I do believe that we're going to hold talks with Thuram this week.
Well, Sean, since you mentioned him, I actually have that clipped up. So just in case it was to happen in the next couple of weeks, I was saving it to when it does happen. But I haven't looked at this for a long time. But what's with this?
I don't think they're too keen on going heavy on a holding midfielder, because I know they've scouted Kephren Thuram a lot. You know, so if they don't have to invest in someone like that, and if they want to push out a year or two and see how he develops at Nice, I think they might hold out and go for someone like him. But there you go.
Still sticking with that one. Yeah,
I tell you, like, it's a funny one, like, isn't it? I make up these incredibly accurate rumors. You know, it's like
the thing about Kephren Thuram, we'll stick on him for a second, because he is everything that you've talked about. Like, he works hard. He's big, physical, 6'4". He can get himself in a tackle, but he's really good on the ball. Can drift. Yeah, we talked about it in our little mini kind of shows. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that one for sure. And he gives you everything that you want in that midfield to add to that midfield. He's got that bite, and he's young, and you can develop him. You know, anyhow, can work with a player and make them better. But the question I have is that how much is it going to take to get someone like Kephren Thuram out of Nice?
Yeah, but like, you know, you're talking to get a talent like him. He's absolutely unique, right? He's like, you can play. He can play. He's playing in the Europa League. He's after playing left of a front three. He can play in both positions as an 8. He can play off both feet comfortably.
Yeah,
very comfortable as a 6. So if you're spending 40-50 million on him, 45 million, that's a bargain to me. In the current market, you know, that's a no-brainer. An absolute athlete, quick, good on the ball. You know, a lot of people had kind of reservations about his ball care and stuff like that. Like, you know, was he sloppy in possession? But that's totally have to turn around this year. You know, we could have done a deal from last year, but they looked at it and they kind of said, let's see how he progresses, because I think they wanted like in the 30 mark last year, which was kind of for somebody after one solid season. I think he was on loan the season before that, and he didn't really have a great loan. So yeah, so I think they paused that deal for a while, see how he developed and then progress from there. But from my understanding is that they will hold talks with Nice this week, you know, in regards to Kephren Thuram.
Interesting. And look, and someone just mentioned about, you know, what about the Thuram brothers? One brother that's gone a little bit quiet at the moment is obviously Matheus Franca. He was meant to be going on a free from Gladbach, get my words out, Gladbach, but he was meant to go in January. He didn't go in January to any club. Chelsea were linked as well. We were, and a number of other clubs. Anything from your perspective with regards to Matheus Franca, and where do you see him going if he does eventually leave on a free?
Like, I was always told, like, I suppose I was always of the impression that he was going to be going to Inter Milan. You know, I don't know if that's been ruled out recently. You know, I haven't really, as I said, I haven't followed him much online and stuff like that. Like, you know, is he going to end up at Newcastle? I can't see it. You know, he got offered huge wages by the likes of Chelsea and stuff like that, like more than we'd ever offer. A lot of question marks around his knees as well and stuff like that. You know, he's missed a couple of games as well with Gladbach in around the January time, and I think put a couple of people off, you know. So I don't know. I can't see it. I can't see the club sanctioning that deal. I can't see him taking the risk on him. You know, you're talking, he's so explosive, he's so quick, and there's question marks still about his knees, you know. So I don't know. It's not one that I'd put my money on, being honest with you. Breaking news tomorrow morning. Matheus Thuram signs for Newcastle.
We're coming back to you if that happens. Holloway Ben is just mentioned, and I know you've just touched on him as well, but there was a little bit of an update with regards to Matheus Franca. Obviously, this was in relation to Arsenal. You know, no proposals were bid at this stage. Fabrizio Romano went back and referred to the fact that we had a €20 million bid turned down in January do you think, because that has gone quiet since that bid was rejected, do you think we'll return with anything for him, in your opinion, or do you think we'll move on? It has been said that Steve Nixon has been in South America again in recent months, looking at one or two players. But what do you think?
That tweet is the ultimate. Hello. Can you put out a few rumors there about Franca there, because we're trying to drum up some interest. It is, that absolutely stinks of age, and let's get him his move now, because it stagnated back in January. Newcastle were told that I think it was like 15 million will do it. We offered a 15, then we were told 20 million will do it, and then we were told no, go again. So from what I got is that if you were to offer Nixon one person from South America, well, of course you have Victor Roque and you have Matheus Franca, that they're the two players that he'd say go all in on. There's two players that he rates very highly, but Matheus Franca is the one that they think would probably have the best crossover. Coming out, a lot of the young players that have come from South America recently have done very well. Look at the Alcaraz, is it at Danilo at Forest? Their transition has been seamless.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, like, the Brazilian league might not be as competitive as the Premier League, but the pace that is played at is frightening. Very much similar to the French league. Like, it's not as competitive, but the game is played at a very good pace. Players that come from France transition a lot quicker than players that come from Germany because of the pace of the game. But I think Franca is definitely watching. When I seen that tweet come out today, I was like, there hasn't really been anything concrete about Arsenal. What are you denying? It's like more on Arsenal with Franca. There's nothing on Arsenal with Franca. Newcastle, we're looking at Franca. It's kind of like, let's get the name out there, let's get it circulating.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you with regards to that, because it has been just absolutely silent, and all of a sudden he's just blowing up again.
Yeah.
I've just looked at some of the player lists here and some of the questions. Like,
there's 50 questions now.
Yeah, we're on 50 questions now. But what I will say is as we're approaching the half an hour mark, the super chats are open. So anyone that puts a super chat in, your question, your opinion gets bumped right to the top of the list, and we will ask Sean directly straight off the bat. So they are now open. I don't know if you want to cue the music.
I have the music ready. It's ready to go once that first super chat comes in, Pete.
Definitely.
And also just to know, and Pete, remind me, we have a members draw, and it was not just one. We're going to have a number of member draws over summer, and the prize tonight is you'll get a voucher for the Newcastle shop, and you'll be able to purchase a Newcastle new kit with that voucher. So it's a decent price. It's about £70 worth. So if you're not a member, sign up as a member, and all members are currently in the draw. If you join now, you'll be in the next one, which is we're going to have them fairly rapid over the summer. And these donations are from Tampa Toon, who's a regular in the chat. So he donated these to us for you guys, for the members. So we'll get to that in a little while.
Definitely. I want to throw a player at you, not because he's been linked with Newcastle, but I want to get both your opinions really with regards to this player and his current situation being a little bit up in the air. And it's this man, Dejan Kulusevski, currently at Tottenham, was on a 2-year loan from Juventus. But actually, reports coming out this afternoon, and it says that he admits he doesn't know. Honestly, we will see, and he admits that his Tottenham future remains uncertain as the club consider triggering the 24.9 million clause to make the loan move permanent. This has been rumbling on for a couple of weeks, guys, and that there's been talks from the Tottenham end that he's not sure whether he wants to sign for Tottenham permanently. And obviously, with them missing out on European football yesterday, it begs the question and brings out more questions on the back of that. What are your thoughts about this, Sean? And I want to get your thoughts on this, Daz. What are your thoughts about this? And do you see, in your opinions, both of you, Dejan Kulusevski as a viable option for Newcastle if he becomes available?
I don't. For the simple fact, I think that release clause that is available to Spurs probably doubles if Newcastle come in from. You know, so I'd say that 24 million probably goes up to, like, they can ask whatever they want. So that's just for Spurs alone, and plus the fact too, it's his profile. You know, we kind of have similar on Gordon. If you weren't after signing Gordon in the summer, you know, I'd probably say, yeah, Kulusevski, fantastic player. I'd have him in a heartbeat. But I just think he'll have a lot of options, and I don't think, for what we're looking at, I don't think he's the player that we're going to go for. But don't get me wrong, I think he's a phenomenal player.
What about you, Daz? Would you would you be interested in? To be fair, obviously one of our loaded boys, Chris Hall, mentioned it the other night when we talked about it. He said, actually, you know, his international teammate Alexander Isak may well be talking about him and potentially talking him up in the Newcastle ranks. But you know, what would you take him?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Pete. That Chris actually has been mentioning him for the last 6 months, because he put that he was idea into our heads if Spurs didn't make top 4 or top 8, where they ended up. So yeah, but would I consider him? Yeah, he'd be on, for me. He'd be on my list. Whether he's on Eddie Howe's list, I don't know. And yeah, the link up with Isak and Kraft as well as in there, the Swedish connection. It might work out. So I'd consider him for sure. But if you're talking offering Spurs a different price than us, then forget it. Not interested. Then just to be awkward.
And I'll just nick the chat just for 1 second, because the main man, Chris Hall, is in the house. And he's put Kulu is a great shout, great age. Talented, and if available for 25 million, why not? Unless you ask for more, which is what Sean said. They may well ask for more, maybe even double. Do they want to get rid, though? Juventus are about to get a 10-point deduction. I think they've already got it, actually, which means that they're out of Europe. So they might need to use that money to reinvest in getting players. He clearly doesn't have a future there. But Sean, I don't know if you want to come in on that one.
No, but look, the Juventus 10-point deduction that was given to him, it was taken off, and then it was given to him again. You know, so whatever happens in Italy, God only knows what's going on there. You know, but no, I can't see it happening, because that release clause is specifically for Spurs only. So if he becomes on the market, and let's be fair, like, he absolutely adapted to the Premier League. I wouldn't judge any player on how Spurs performed this season, but end last year, started this year, fantastic player.
Definitely, he is. And look, I don't really judge him too much on this season, purely because they've been shocking this season. No real quality coaching, falling all over the place as a club and as a group of players. But yeah, I think he's got lots and lots of time. 23 years old.
Crazy, isn't it?
3 years old.
I've been hearing about him for so long. And I actually seen it. I seen it retweeted by somebody, maybe it was yesterday or today or something like that. And I was like, no way. I actually had to go in and check to make sure the age was right. He's been waiting to burst on the scene for a long time, like, hasn't he? You know, but yeah, look, I'd have been a heartbeat, but I just think that his price will get massively inflated, you know, because people know he can take to the Premier League. You know, I suppose we rounded up on Szoboszlai, I suppose, to go back to Diaby. That's an interesting one, really, you know. As I said, I suppose I was chatting to you earlier, like, you know, Diaby's a name that I've been asked by a few people. You know, there might be a person on stage with actually Keith Downey tonight at that True Fate event that sent me on a bit of information about Diaby and asked me to put it out to see if there was anything kind of bit on it. So there might be a funny conversation afterwards. But yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to understand what's happening with Diaby, because the brief from the club is that he's not a target. You know, Pete, I would have went to you last summer and said that I don't think he's somebody Ashworth actually rates. You know, I don't think he's somebody he's going to bring in. But recently, there's a lot of people kind of could be briefing the Diaby camp saying that the club are going to reach out. They're going to find out exactly what a deal is going to look like for him, if he's interested in what Leverkusen are looking for. And then maybe it's a deal that if Maxi goes, do they go back and look for him? But the profile that I've been given, it doesn't look like Diaby fits it. You know, so I'd be surprised if Diaby came in. But there's a lot of people trying to get rumours out there about Diaby to Newcastle to see if the club will kind of openly deny it. You know, which I think I've seen a few people reply to me today saying that Craig Hope has denied it. I don't know. I didn't see any articles or anything like that about it. So let's see where that is. But Diaby doesn't fit the profile, but a lot of people ask me to push it out. And Transfer Checker on Twitter is probably the most reliable person I suppose, on Twitter when it comes to transfers. He went fairly hard on Diaby to Newcastle there the other day, saying that he was a top target. So let's see what comes out of it, you know.
Definitely. It's three things that we talked about probably in detail over the summer. One was Sven Botman. And you, to be fair, even when all the Italian links were saying he's going AC, the only one that was coming out and saying he's going to be a Newcastle player. Don't listen to them. They're drawing up interest for their Italian benefits because of obviously they're reporting for AC Milan, basically, is what you were saying. And Sven Botman came to Newcastle. The second one was Moussa Diaby that you just touched on. Whereas I was like rubbing my hands together and going, "Oh, Moussa Diaby." You were saying, "Don't think Dan Ashworth is keen," and you said that last summer. Third one was Alexander Isak before it was even news. The only two people, I said this to you, Sean, the other day, the only two people that actually said at any point that Alexander Isak would be a Newcastle United player was you, and then I think about a week later, Luke Edwards reported on it. And even then, both, even I questioned you about Isak, and I thought, really? And then Luke Edwards got stick. He got a load of stick off the back of putting the Isak thing out. Oh, we're not going to spend 60, 70 million euros on a striker, this, that, and the other. And then we did. So they're the things that I'll say. They're not out there in public because we talk about that in private, but they were the three things that we kind of had that conversation.
See, the thing about it is, you know, with my account or whatever, people say, "Oh, you're only you're doing it for the money," which I obviously get zero money from it. You're doing it for the attention. What attention? Or you're doing it for a profile. I don't have any YouTube channels. I don't have any paid subscriptions. I don't have anything. Literally, what I do is whatever I hear, I put it out. You know, a lot of times I get information from journalists that are saying, "I'm not going to put this information out because if it goes wrong, fucking my place of work gets abused, not just me." Throw it out there and see what comes over, and I'll put it out because for me, I'm just a fan. I'm just putting out information. If you don't like it, happy days. If you do, follow. You know, like it doesn't bother me.
Just on that then, Sean, like surely you have some filter though, because you apply your own logic as well to some of the stuff.
Oh, I do, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like as I said to you earlier there, I was away on holidays there for 2 weeks and I came back, I turned on my phone and I would have had, I'd say, a good 6-7 people saying to me, Kieran Tierney to Newcastle is a done deal, 35 million, done deal, sign off. But I have one person who I trust that's saying, absolutely not. Club have reservations about him. Injury record, too much money, etc. Nothing adds up. Arsenal are pushing the deal. They've offered him, they've made him available to West Ham, to Aston Villa and stuff like that. And applying my logic to it, it's something that I don't see happening. You know, that's just applying logic. You know, a lot of people are saying, and a lot of accounts with big following that have got a lot of stuff right are saying that Tierney to Newcastle is absolutely nailed on. If it happens, it happens. I'd be surprised. You know, I have a lot of people telling me it's happening as well, you know, but I'm just going off his injury record. You know, I know a few Arsenal fans that are saying that if you watch him go into a challenge, he actually winces. You know, his pace isn't as what it is. You know, he's not the same player. He doesn't have confidence going into a challenge, you know, and they're holding off on playing him because they don't want him to get injured, all this kind of stuff. So for me, it just doesn't add up, you know.
Lads, do you mind if we go to some questions? Because we've got like 70 or actually 69. Great number. Oh, did you put it in the private chat? Sorry, I didn't see that. And just to answer, where was it? One of the questions from.
What about the one before that one? That was a good one. A good comment.
Oh yeah, that one was a good comment. Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to get the Sunderland jersey, like.
Oh, no.
This one from Mark Todd. No, you don't have to put that in the super chat to get your question answered. But if you wanted to get to the top of the list, you'll have to, I'm afraid, because we've got a long list here. Sean, let's go rapid fire for about 10
rapid fire.
Okay. Okay. Any idea when the club will release their retained list?
No.
Okay. Follow up? We'll be on it. That's a kind of a long answer. Maybe we'll skip over that one.
Could be an hour show.
Yeah. You've answered this one already from Tom about Szoboszlai. Okay, from Craig Lee, what positions players do the club see as a priority? I suppose maybe the positions.
So what I know they're looking at is they're looking at a young keeper as backup, the Pope. They're looking at a right centre back. Maybe a right centre back that can also fill in as a right back. Maybe there's reservations about if Kieran Trippier, he'll be 34 next season. If he picks up an injury, you have Ashby there. Emil Kraft is just after a year out with injury, so they're looking at maybe an Ivan Fresenda type. Can he play centre back, right back? They're keeping that option open. Do you go all in on Kim, who is definitely a target from Napoli? He's somebody that they looked at. They touched base early on him. Yeah, so look, I would actually put out something a few weeks back on him to say that he was now a target. The thing about it is that Manchester United have made themselves available to it as well, and they're offering crazy money and wages, but they're kind of flapping around the release clause. I think it's like about 47 million, and I think that's the kind of release clause that would be a proper release clause. You either pay the money up front or you don't trigger at all. Tabido is another one they're looking at strongly from Nice. Kevin Danzo, they're looking at players that can probably fill that kind of, and that's why Kim kind of is a bit of an outlier. He's very much restricted as either a centre back, as a right centre back or left centre back. He can't really play in the full back positions. They're looking at kind of what Man City are doing, and you have like a Kanji and Ake that can play in both, that can play in the full back positions. You bring in a Tabido, you bring him in at a young age where he doesn't have to start every week, and you can see he has the pace, the power, the awareness on the ball, or even a Kevin Danzo, a player like this that can play as centre back or even a right centre back if you're going to kind of play more of a City style. So the right centre back position, I don't think they've decided yet whether they want to replace Schär, which what Kim would do, or do they want to bring in somebody that's going to kind of be a bit of an understudy and kind of learn both roles, but they're definitely looking at, is Ashby up to, which I'm hearing from behind the scenes, is that they rate him very highly, Ashby, and he's doing very well training, etc., and stuff like that. But with Champions League and this, that, and the other, realistically, if they can get in a right centre back that could develop into somebody that can cover full back position in very much the Akanji mould, that's exactly what they want to do. Left back, again, a lot of people saying Kieran Tierney, but doesn't really fit the profile. Athlete, minimal injuries, over 6 foot. Can play in a variety of positions. I know he can play left centre back as well, but I think Lloyd Kelly is somebody that creased back onto the radar. Lloyd Kelly and Backer are two people that you start looking at kind of creeping back in. We know that they're looking at centre midfielders. So for me, they'd have to fit the mould of a Kephren Thuram and a Szoboszlai. So Thuram can play as 6 or an 8, so he could interchange with Bruno. And you're looking at Szoboszlai, who can play across multiple positions. I can't see him going out, and I know Ugarte is somebody that they've scouted extensively, and they can see him playing as a 6 or an 8. But I genuinely think that Newcastle probably do anything that could trigger those release clause if they wanted to. But I think they'll look at Thuram, and they'll definitely look at him first. I'm also told that Conor Gallagher is definitely somebody that Howe is going to go back looking at. Howe rates him very, very highly. They think he's an absolute energizer bunny, and that his potential is untapped. They still think that they'll get him for a lot lower than what Chelsea are looking for, and Chelsea are looking to offload players now. But he wants to stay in London. I know there was a couple of questions came in there about Gallagher. And then when it comes to strikers, it's an interesting one. They're going to look at a wing. They're going to look at a striker, say, outside of a striker/winger, very much in the kind of Nico Williams mold there at Atletico Bilbao for Torres, which is something that I can't stand up.
Can I throw one out there to you?
Yeah.
Plays in Germany, French international, Randall Kolo Muani. So many teams are linked with him at the moment. He's doing really, really good stuff out there. I don't know if you've heard anything on him.
No, and you know what? He was a free transfer last year. Crazy, isn't it? Again, it's not something I've heard solid on, but I know his agent is drumming up a lot of interest. I would have said to you before the show
today. Yeah.
The two names that I have people asking me, journalists, etc., and reps and whatever that I have asking me to push hard for Newcastle are Cavadonna from Napoli and push Diaby. Is this information correct or not? I don't know. I can't really see it, but they're trying to push it hard because the feeling at Napoli is that if Anishheim gets the offer and Kim get the offers first, they'll be the only two offloaded. You know, after that they'll keep everybody else, and Cavadonna's people don't want them to keep them there if those are gone. You know, because they feel like they're a club that will probably kind of drift back off into the kind of 3rd, 4th, 5th position kind of thing. Like, you know, so if they can get him out, they want to try and get him out first.
Isn't the manager at Napoli taking a bit of a sabbatical there as well?
He is, yeah. He is. You know, a player that we would have covered last year, I think in an earlier show, I tried to kind of listen back through him. I couldn't find it, but Hodgland is someone that the club looked extensively at last year, you know, when the Ekatika deal fell through and stuff like that. But they chose to kind of step away from it and see how he develops somewhere else. But keep an eye on him. They've watched him extensively over the summer, over the year. And Evan Ferguson is another one at Brighton. I'm told that Evan Ferguson is very much a player that, even Ferguson or Hodgland, that they're two players that they'd hold off on, and they might see how they progress again over this year and look at them next summer. You know, the thing about it is that you'll see a lot of targets that they have. You know, there's a young left back there. I think it's from is at Alkmaar he plays for. He's Hungarian as well. I forget his name off the top of my head. He's close to joining Benfica at the moment, but Newcastle have extensively scouted him. They've watched him really closely, and they're kind of do they sign him now? Do they wait and see how he gets on at Benfica and then go for him? You know, there's a lot of stuff up in the air there. You know, so I think kind of, have they settled on a list? I really don't know. You know, but there's a lot of noises coming out that it'll probably be 4 players that they'll definitely go that they think will go straight into the first team. And that will be a left back, a right centre back. They'll look at a 6/8, a Thuram type, and then they'll look at a winger in the sense of a winger 8, such Szoboszlai, and then probably 2 or 3 for kind of the underbelly of the squad.
Okay. Next question from David Cook, and I guess the answer here is probably Kephren Thuram, but who do you think is most likely to be our central defensive midfielder, number 6?
They want Thuram. You know, do they get him? I don't know. I'd say probably after Thuram, Ugarte is the one in that backs it up. You know, back in January, I would have put out a tweet before most people would have linked Ugarte, and I would have said both of them are the 2 players that they're looking at extensively for the 6th role. But who they get, we don't know. You know, I think Thuram is probably, as I said, they'll hold talks with Thuram this week, and see what comes out of it. But he'd probably be the one that I'd say that if they had a choice, he's the one that they take. From what you're getting, and I know this was covered in articles, but I think it was at The Athletic or somewhere else like that would have covered it. And from what I heard is that Steve Nixon is all in on Thuram, that he probably is number 1. Like,
good question here from A2. Any other relegated players linked? Lavia, Gonto, Adams. I suppose we could throw in Ward Prowse. There's a number of them, and then you've half of Leicester.
Do you know what the funny thing about Lavia, you know, and watching him in bits and stuff like that, like, I think he's fantastic. You know, really fucking big potential. But the kind of what I got back from somebody recently is that why he was let go at Man City. I know they have a clause to kind of buy him back and stuff like that, and question marks that a lot of clubs have about him. You know, like I know Liverpool linked him, Newcastle linked him and stuff like that, is that he lacks intensity. You know, that he likes to kind of operate in the space, very clever player and stuff like that, but he doesn't sprint a whole lot. He doesn't chase people a whole lot. And if you see him, he gets kind of caught in kind of that wandering position in midfield. Maybe that's probably how Southampton set up. I don't know, but big question marks around Lavia's intensity.
Interesting.
Livramento is a good shout there from Michael Parner.
He is very good. Kyle Walker-Peters is another one I think is a fantastic shout.
We love him. Yeah.
You know, I covers both left and right back. You know, the profile and height wise doesn't really add up, but always had a strong game against Newcastle. You know, Harvey Barnes. You know, I would have linked him, I suppose, way back. I suppose on one of these shows. You know, put out a couple of tweets about it. Definitely a player they've looked at. You know, but where are they with that? Do you know that we're a Champions League club? We're a Champions League club. You know, it sounds a bit crazy to say it, but I don't know. Is he the kind of profile of player that they're looking at now that we are a Champions League club? I think they're probably looking up a little bit.
I think he wants to leave. Speaking to Leicester fans, like I think it's documented, like within their circles that he wants to leave. But I think there's 2 things that will affect that. Certainly coming to Newcastle anyway is the price that Leicester will want for him, because he's still got 2 years left on his contract. The second thing is they talk about his lack of consistency, and we've talked about it watch on our channel quite a bit. Yeah, he's up and down. Obviously, he scored yesterday, but that he'll go through games where, like, through periods where he'll be leafing in front of the goal and he'll be terrorizing, fullbacks, and then he'll go through games where he just drifts and he doesn't do anything. And for the amount of money that you're going to sign, so if you're, for example, Leicester wanted in the summer and still want roughly, as far as reports from Leicester fans are concerned, they want about 60 million for him. But if you're going to pay 60 million for him, and he was Leicester's top scorer, he gets goals, he gets assists, but surely you'd want for 60 million someone that's ready-made. We've talked about Moussa Diaby. Just as an example, you're getting guaranteed and Champions League experience for about the same price.
No, I can't see it. I know Eddie Howe. Like a lot of people will say, and a lot of people say, Premier League experience, Premier League experience, Premier League experience. Realistically, our best signings have come from outside the Premier League. Isaiah Botman and Bruno Guimaraes. Granted, Trippier had experience in the Premier League, but Trippier was slated by the Spurs fans before he left. Like he went to Spain, learned how to defend, and came back. So kind of that is a little bit flawed. The kind of thing behind that is a little bit flawed. But yeah, like he leans heavy on the Premier League experience. But the problem is that if you're looking at a player in the Premier League with Premier League experience, the wages are going to be astronomical and the price is going to be as well. The kind of phrase that was returned to me when I asked, I was like, are things going to change now that we've qualified for the Champions League? Are they going to look for Champions League experience? And they were saying, well, first was saying, that's nonsense. It's a stupid question in the sense of every successful club, you don't buy Champions League players, you build Champions League players. You look at Liverpool, look at the Liverpool model, Van Dijk, Salah, Mane, Firmino, all these players, Andy Robertson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, granted they didn't sign him, all these players, you build it. If Liverpool were backed financially by FSG, Liverpool would be absolutely untouchable now because of that model that they had, the way that Klopp can integrate players into the squad, the system they had, the like of Edwards and stuff like that working behind the scenes. They'd have Odegaard, Sven Botman, Dominic Szoboszlai. They've had all these players in the door right now. Tuchemi had Real Madrid, Bellingham. They'd all be Liverpool players long before, they even they would have hit the headlines in a big way. What Newcastle have now is we have all these right people in the right places with unlimited resources. Financially, there's absolutely nothing holds us back. Because I know a lot of people will say, and I've seen Martin Samuel's thing about the big six will never change, and financially they have the market cornered. Newcastle's 5-year plan isn't to get into the Champions League in 5 years; is to be financially sustainable against the big six in 5 years. What I would have said last January, before like Dan Ashworth was actually coming in and we were going into a transfer window with Stavely and Gadusi and them, is that football is a business and you want your business people running your business. It is a business. When you leave football people in charge of a football club, 9 times out of 10 it goes tits up. You want financial people in charge of financials and to put the right people in place. In Dan Ashworth, they probably have one of the greatest minds in football. Eddie Howe, what people forget about Eddie Howe is Eddie Howe took Bournemouth from rock bottom in League 2, minus 17 points, and got him into the Premier League. When he was there, it was him and the chairman. There was no directors. There was no real scouting staff. There was no backroom staff. He was the builder, the baker, and the candlestick maker. He was everything. He has the experience. He's done it and lived it, and he understands what you have to do. So we have some of the greatest minds of football, and the team that Dan Ashworth is building behind the scenes with these video analysts and all this kind of stuff. So we'll have that Liverpool setup, but we will have the financial means to actually facilitate what we need, which is unbelievable. We're not even at scratching the surface on our potential. I know people are talking about transfer budgets and is it 100 million or is it 150 million? What is a transfer budget? Alexander Isak. Say if your budget is 100 million, you bring in Alexander Isak for 67 million. Does that mean that 67 million of your budget is gone? No, it doesn't. It means that what did you pay up front? You paid 15, 20 million up front. So that's 15, 20 million for your budget gone. Is there a budget? I'm told no. They will be flexible and they will live within their means, wages wise, but they can structure a deal to suit. So with budget, there's no such. I won't say there's no such thing in football, but for Newcastle, realistically, there's not. There's a wage cap, which is something that helps you grow sustainably. But we can offer these deals to clubs, and we can pay it over X amount of years. So when it comes to that, and now we have the bonus of Champions League as well. So with budget, I wouldn't bog myself down in it. The reason why ITK accounts and the nonsense that comes out exist is because you'll have journalists come out and say these kind of deadpan comments of they're only going to spend 100 million on this stuff, and then people are kind of like, oh Jesus, there you go, and I'll try and explain then say, he's saying X, Y, Z, but it's look again, they're not going to press the club either because you don't bite the hand that feeds you.
I like the way you distance yourselves from those ITK accounts there, Sean. Nice one. But a bit of breaking news there as well to come as well. Let me just get lined up here for that, because there's a man in the chat that needs his fix, and that is Mr. Chris Hall. So he's come in with the super chat, and he wants to hear the sexy robot voice. So we have to give him what he asked for.
Super chat received.
Just in case you missed that.
Super chat received. Super chat received.
There you go. Back to work.
Oh, Chris, you do make me laugh.
But it's the again, like when you talk about ITK accounts, I love annoying people with that, and I'm like, Jesus, those ITK accounts, whatever, shut up. But like for me, like if you look at it, everybody that puts out, I'm not trying to gain anything from it. Like for me, it's a bit of crack, and all the abuse and all this kind of stuff. Jesus Christ, you might as well be banging your head off the wall, because you're not going to get a reaction of me. I'll never explain myself to anybody. It's it's just, and I'm going to get into it, but it's just a waste of time, because when I see somebody actually abusing me, I'm like, it probably took me 30 seconds to write the tweet. You've had to think about that tweet, get annoyed by it, reply to me, and then wait to see if I've replied to you. So I've probably occupied an hour of your day with 30 seconds of my time, so you silly bollocks, like, why are you winding yourself up? You're not going to get a reaction. You might as well be banging your head off the wall, but hey, it's funny.
Yeah. People, there's one or two questions like this, Sean. I know you did kind of cover it before in previous shows, but they're asking about where you get your info from. Do you want to divulge any kind of background on that?
Secrets.
Never reveal your sources.
I make a lot up. I play a lot of Football Manager as well. Somebody said to me, I've never actually. I don't play computer games, like I don't own a computer in the sense of PlayStation or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, again, look, it was just, as I said before, it's absolutely one contact I had that I kind of got through pure luck back in the day, and they had a link to the takeover stuff. As I said, just a kind of, I never really put out any information. The only reason I ever started putting out transfer information in the first place, or even information in general, was around the takeover, because I was seeing people, and there was people's mental health massively affected by it, and there was so much lies in the media and stuff, and I was like, I'm staying away from it, I'm not getting into it, I just couldn't be bothered with it. I didn't have the time either, and then you could see people, and they fucking, it was getting really bad, and people were getting, and there was so much lies in the media at the time, and I was like, why aren't I telling the truth? So I started putting out what I knew, and then it just started gathering followers and started answering questions and stuff like that. So, and then around the takeover, my information was so accurate, I had a lot of people kind of sliding into my DMs and stuff like that, and then it just built from there. It just went crazy from there over the 2 years. So it's kind of one source, really, one or two sources that just luckily, like the first source, as I say, he wasn't necessarily linked to Newcastle in a way, ended up being linked to a manager that was at the club for a bit. But good information on the takeover, and it just grew from there, Now I have a lot of kind of journalists and representatives of people and stuff like that will kind of get onto me and say, can you push this there and see, and if it gains a bit of traction and other people pick up on it, they can go back to the club and they can say, there's a lot of stuff there on social media about Moussa Diaby. What do you think is happening? There's a lot of noise. So I'm a kind of a creator of noise, so people can get the right information or the wrong information. And it doesn't bother me, as I have absolutely zero skin in the game. I do not ever want to earn anything or be anything when it comes to promoting or doing podcasts or any of that kind of stuff. It's, so I don't mind if I'm wrong and stuff like that, if it means that the right information comes out somewhere, but everything that I put out, whether it's right or wrong, it comes out somewhere, or it's questioned, or it's answered, or there is some source of truth to it, like, you know. But as I said, I don't really have to defend it. You either follow me or you don't. And if you get wound up by it, then happy days.
Right, I'm going to hand back to Pete to carry on in a second. You've got one massive fan in Captain Kephren. Can Sean be on every week, please? The lovers and the haters. So thanks for that, Captain. Pete, because maybe we'll go back to you. You might want to bring us down another direction, but this because there's still like 49 questions in the chat. We got through a few.
We did, and we hit the hour mark. I'm not sure how much more we've got of you, Sean. There are a few more questions.
Yeah, we'll give it another 15 minutes, I'd say, if you want to go through a quick few yes/no questions, if you can.
Okay.
And I'll just go yes/no. I won't get carried off because you know us Irish, we love to chat.
Well, chat away. Even if we get through 3 or 4 players, it doesn't matter. The conversation is what makes the show. And just at this point, I want to go back to Chris Hall. He said 580 in the chat. Lies. It's now 600 in the chat. Welcome all of you, 600 in the chat, but only 179 likes. There should be 600 likes in this chat.
Come on, we're Champions League, baby. Come on,
Champions League Newcastle.
Come on.
It makes sense. So make sure you hit those likes. And look, any of you that are new to the channel, come and subscribe, because this is not the only show that we're going to be putting in this summer. We are going to be putting weekly transfer shows.
It's the only show worth watching, though, being honest.
Well, you said that, Sean. We didn't say that, but
Sean says
no, it is. No, what absolutely puzzles me by this, you know, I've over the last 2-3 years, I've tried watching other channels, and I'm not just saying it because I come on here. Don't get me wrong, the NUFC Matter stuff there, the likes of Steve Reid and the lads, great content, you know, very good. But yourselves, you know, like how you have this little following, you know, I say little, I know like 6,000 is a lot, like, you know, but like how it hasn't grown more over that time is crazy, you know. But when you kind of sit with it and you look at it and I kind of digested a little bit of social media and kind of like, you're not controversial enough, you know, you're honest, you just give honest opinions, there's no nonsense, you know, there's no silliness or stupidness, it's just kind of like proper pub chat, like, isn't it, you know, it's kind of, and that's why he came on the show first day, when Martin would have reached out, and I think it was Richie would have reached out first, I'd say, is because like I listened to you and it was pure kind of pub chat, just like, let's have a chat, let's have a laugh and joke, you know, there's nothing controversial about you, you know, and when I look at kind of my own account, it's like, the worse it gets in the sense of if I say something, if it's wrong, or if like, you know, like with the tweet the other day with Keith or whichever one it was off Sky Sports, like that's the end of him. I got like 120 followers and the tweet was like fucking crazy traction, and I was like, the more controversial you are, the more people will follow it. You know, like you see these Liverpool fans there, like, you know, like the fella on TikTok there, like, you know, just this nonsense, you know, and these quick minute nonsense videos, and they get loads of views because people will tune in to laugh at someone more than they'll actually listen, than they say, oh yeah, you know, I have to put a bit of time and thought and listen to what they say, you know. So for me, your content is absolutely fantastic, you know, and I try to get it the best I can, you know. I try to listen into you, but Jesus, some of the other nonsense that's out there is fucking crazy, like, you know, and the followers that they have, like, it absolutely baffles me.
Look, obviously we appreciate those comments, and look, we as a channel, I think that you'd agree, and you have your own opinions on this. But from my perspective, you know, what we've built right now is what we wanted to build. We wanted to build a pub chat type of feel. Our opinions, our conversation, various different guests to build that, and we could quite have easily gone way back when down that controversial route. That lots of others have gone with, whether it's like, you know, drumming up things to create a reaction so people viewing. No, that's not our style.
You know, it is. I like it, you know.
And if it's a slow build, it's a slow build. Like if it takes us a little bit longer to get where others are getting to, fine. We'd love to be at 10, 15, 20,000 subscribers. But we one thing that we said as a group, Daz, and look, I think you might agree, and you'll have your opinion on this, is that we decided to stick to what is true to us. So
And the other thing, we will get back to the questions. Don't worry about that, people. But is that our focus, our mantra was about being united. And yeah, someone else took that on then from us as well, because before the takeover, our plan was to be united and bring other channels together as well, and bring them on our shows. And we have a show called United as well that we've and we'll get more channels, Newcastle channels on as well. But yeah. United, it kind of grew legs after that, and
it was actually funny, you know, when you mentioned that. It's when you look at that tweet, there was so many other channels jumped on me to kick the boot and to say, yeah, he's a fraud, end him now, you know. And it's like all the other channels and a lot of lads that you'd have on the show, and I'm like, yeah, absolute idiots. Like, you know, you just don't get it. Like, you know, it's funny, you know, but sure. Either way, it is what it is.
Right, rapid fire.
Question time.
Rapid fire. John Casello.
No.
Francesca.
Yeah, interesting one. You know, Arsenal want him, but I think the 30 million needs to be paid up front, which is not something Arsenal are fans of. But if he doesn't go to Arsenal, Newcastle are 100% interested.
Harrison from Leeds.
Never interested.
Relegated. Never interested. Arda Geller, the young lad.
Yeah, definitely interested. Yeah.
Good player.
Yeah.
I think it'd probably be him or Alex Scott. I think they're kind of deciding between both.
Yes, Alex Scott, another one. I tell you what, he's got a big future ahead of him wherever
he has, but I think it might be a future at Brighton. That's a lot of talk I'm hearing at the moment. So let's see. But I think we're between Guler and Alex Scott, I think, for that role.
Any news from Tommy asked any news on the new contract for Bruno?
I think that, I've been honest, I was told that was agreed back a couple of months ago. That it's a formality. I don't think it's something that they dealt with in the season, but it's agreed and in place.
Cool. David Cook asked about the goalkeeping situation. Yeah, because it looks like we're going to lose a few keepers. We need to freshen up. Any news of any incomers in the goal?
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to bring in a keeper, but I think they're trying to decide on what level. You know, they're going to bring him into. They're bringing somebody that's a direct replacement for Pope, because I think we've all seen how easy he is with his feet. And if you look at the way Newcastle kind of split the defence yesterday, you know, it was kind of Botman in the middle, kind of sharp push to the right, and you had Byrne, you know, they were almost like a 3 centre-backs. Dubs was fantastic with his feet yesterday. Something I hadn't seen him do before. He was excellent.
Agreed.
You know, his distribution Jesus Christ, I looked like a different goalkeeper. Yeah, you know, and I think our defensive shape and build-up looked a lot better. Don't get me wrong. Nick Pope is an absolute incredible keeper, but I think they'll look at somebody like they are strongly linked with Costa again, but I think they'll look at a keeper that's good with the ball at his feet.
Chris mentions Lafont, and I know we've talked about the Porto keeper before. Anthony.
Well, look, Newcastle are going to meet with Jorge Mendes this week. So they will discuss multiple targets. So he'll be one of them. You know, he has a release clause, but it's how do they want that release clause played? You know, I think Lafont has had a fairly bad season this year, you know, so I think he's struggling a little bit for confidence.
Okay. Olise, Palace.
Yeah, I think he's one that they look at. He has a release clause. I don't know if it's still valid for a Champions League club, which Newcastle are, you know. But he's definitely one to keep an eye on, yeah.
All right. Mike asks about Eze.
I haven't, you know what, I've heard a lot about him kind of in the 2 years building up to this window, but I've heard no noise of him recently. I think Olise probably becomes an option if the likes of an Almiron or an ASM go. But with Easy, I haven't seen anything of him recently, being honest with you. I think that kind of dynamic 8 role, you're probably going to look at Szoboszlai.
Guys, can I just jump in here?
Yeah,
I'm going to throw a few players out here. Out the door.
Bye-bye.
Out the door.
I think so, yeah. You know.
Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me. You're killing me, man. Oh.
Graham Bailey's going, yes, I know, I can see him now.
but then if Maddison comes in, then like my heart is kind of.
Do you know what? If we got Europa League, say, or conference, I'd say 100% he'd be gone. But I think you'd probably struggle to move the player now. I don't know why his and Howe's relationship is now, but it was kind of a little bit fractured from what I heard after the Sheffield Wednesday game. But Howe is one of these people that if you put in the work, I'll forgive and I'll forget.
If you did you guys see the reaction that he got from from his, like, where I was in the away end? But
crazy, yeah.
like even during the game, like I think Bruno was down and they was singing his name and he was kind of pointing to the badge and like clapping the fans. Like he's still loved by so many Newcastle United fans. I would say there's probably more that don't want to see him gone than fans that do, but it's about building the club. So whatever happens. Really quickly, we haven't talked about this guy.
No, I can't see it, man.
I can't see it now either.
No.
I think Craig Lee put it in the chat earlier as a question.
No.
Yes.
Everybody has a siren
party
with regards to that one.
He's not as bad as I thought he was, actually, but still, no, don't want him. No.
Like Sean said, with regards to Champions League football, we're looking at better players, and this brings me on to the last one before I hand it back to you, Daz.
I just don't think he's dynamic enough.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
You know,
he's already said his goodbyes to Wolves, though. So he's definitely leaving.
Look, it depends how the market plays out, you know. But as of now, he's not a top priority. But look, definitely looking at him, they understand the situation. They did speak with his reps in January and stuff like that. He is liked, but ideally they want somebody with a bit more athleticism.
Okay.
You know, and that's to kind of corner him off with Edson Alvarez as well. So Alvarez and Neves are two. Edson Alvarez is somebody that they have extensively scouted. He can play a centre back, right back, and play in a 6. You know, I heard that I've kind of heard mixed reviews on him at the moment. You know, the club definitely looked at him. The targets never change, but not a priority at the moment. I think they'll look at the right centre back situation, and if they get in who they want there, I think Alvarez probably doesn't become much of an option then. I know he plays as a 6, but if you don't get who you want in right centre back, you could probably bring in him as a 6 that can cover that position then as well, you know. So it depends who they get in first, basically. But he's on the list, but he's down the list, if that makes sense.
Okay, let's go back to the questions as we get more rapid fire. From Al Williamson from the Irish chat. Sorry a minute, lad. Could you ask Sean if he can do a Royal Rumble style fight with anyone calling him out on the Irish Bags WhatsApp group? So
no, I actually put a bet up because there's an Irish Mag WhatsApp group, you know, just to chat football or whatever. That don't interact much on it, but after the tweet the other day, there was a few people went in on it, like, you know, and I was like, lads, I don't argue. It's plain and simple. I said, I live in Cork. I said, we can pick a middleman. I will give them €500. We will meet in person, and I will show them proof of a transfer deal certified and given to me by a top journalist. I said, let's pick the Joe Pedro deal because that made me look like an idiot. I said, we will pick the Joe Pedro deal. I will give you proof of Joe Pedro celebrating his move to Newcastle. Absolute concrete proof. I'll put up 500. You put up 500. If I am telling lies or if I can't verify it, you put your donation into a charity of your choice, or I put my donation. And it all went off in a tangent and nobody backed it up. You know, so I was willing to put my money up. I actually selected a person I know that lives close to me. I said, I will hand him the money right now and I will meet you in person whenever you want, and I will show you my messages of Joe Pedro celebrating the Newcastle move, and the person that verified everything from me. We keep it between us, friendly bet. And no reply really, you know, just a bit of nonsense, you know, usual stuff, you know, but it is what it is. You know, I was going to back up my end of it, but as I said on Twitter and stuff like that, I'll never argue my sources are backed up like that, but in the WhatsApp group, because there's people that kind of live locally to me and stuff like that, absolutely, I'd prove you wrong.
I'm in that group too as well, Sean, but I have to mute it because it just kills your phone and there's like thousands of messages in it.
Yeah, I'm muted as well, but you get all the stuff, so kind of my phone went a little bit crazy that day.
Cool. Right, Diego Almada, and the link up with Darren Eales, Michael Palmaras. Any chance of it?
Heard noise, right? But again, I'm just ruling this out basically on doesn't fit the profile. Can he play multiple positions? Is he over 6 foot? Can he play as an inverted winger? As his shots per game up on the higher levels? No, and they're not going to try to develop Almada and try to develop Gordon in the same season. Very much with Isaac, where they kind of brought in Isaac and they pushed out on the Pedro deal because they didn't want to try and develop 2 strikers into that role at once, you know.
Cool. Ferran Torres.
I'd love him. His hat-trick at St. James's Park was excellent, but I've got nothing at the moment that can back it up. And he went back to Barcelona because he was homesick.
Yeah, it doesn't add up though, is it, that one?
That was that today, by the way. Newcastle had Barcelona winger Ferran Torres with the cash-strapped Spanish Giants needing another 160 million to break even on FFP. Also mentions Rafinha could leave
again. And Rafinha
in there.
Yeah, I can't see Rafinha happening, but it was nice to see it backed up by a big journalist because I went in on it last and I said he was a tag and I got abuse for him and stuff like that. I can't see it happening, but there's noises behind the scenes, you know, but he wants to stay in Barcelona, you know, and the money he's on and stuff like that, I just can't see it happening. But yeah, with Torres and with Barcelona in general, Barcelona badly need to offload players off the books, but again, crazy wages, you know.
There's a few questions then, Sean, around sponsorships. So, Sean, have you seen any info on this?
Just another one as well to touch on there.
Yeah.
Does Frankie de Jong become available? You know, Newcastle did definitely inquire about him before, you know. Manchester United don't have the money. Other clubs are looking elsewhere. Moussa is available. Ugarte is available. Declan Rice is available. You know.
Yeah, there's a few. Yeah.
If you want to go to that elite level. With sponsorships, do you know what now? I'm so saturated in information about backroom staff coming in, sponsorships coming in, this, that, the other. I took a bit of stick last week for the Salah deal because I said I knew who it was, you know. Again, you know, it's people's interpretation of English baffles me. Exactly what I said is that people end up in egg on their faces because MR is not going to be the sponsorship. You know, I just said that was it. I was just told in a DM, somebody said to me, there's a lot of traction with MR. They're definitely not the sponsor. I didn't know that Salah were coming in. Nobody knew about it. Why? The interesting thing is that the stuff around the sponsorship, the 25 million and stuff like that before it came out, I was asked to start pushing a rumor that the sponsorship deal is done and there's a Middle Eastern company after doing the deal, 25 million, this, that, and the other. And I just didn't really have the time to put it out and put the effort into it, you know. And then somebody else kind of came out with it and it grew from there. But with other sponsorships, I was told they had another 2 sponsorships lined up, but undecided on whether to pull through on them with the money from Champions League and stuff like that. Do they need to pull that trigger now? You know, do they wait? You know, let the club build its profile a little bit more and then bring in these sponsorships. With the Adidas one, I think Adidas have made it clear that they want to sponsor the club. The problem with that is that Adidas want this deal to happen next summer, but I think there's another year on the Castore deal, so they want Newcastle to be able to get an agreement with Castore to finish a year early, and then Adidas will push through a deal what Newcastle want, as well as that they don't want a deal like Manchester United have that, or if you finish in this position, if you finish first, you get this amount, if you finish second, you get this, if you finish third, you get that. And there's all clauses based on their algorithm. Newcastle just want, this is the money straight up. We know what we're getting every year for X amount of years. Let's do it. There is talks ongoing, and Adidas do want to sponsor the club. But again, look like they're talking about renaming the stadium. It'll be very much say, for example, Saudi at St. James's Park, and they're talking about renaming the East End. So you're talking the stadium and the East End, the training ground redevelopment. There's no name for the training ground, so they can rename the training ground. You know, the training kit, they can get a sponsor for the training kit. So there's loads of financial levers that they can pull if they need to pull them, and they have the deals lined up to do that. Let's be honest. Let's stop kidding ourselves for a second, you know. You see fans get absolutely wound up to their tits about, we're not owned by Saudi Arabia. You know, Mohammed Ben Salam has no interest. Fuck's sake, like, give me a break. We're owned by Saudi Arabia. We are probably the most state-owned football club ever to exist in football. You know, you look at PIF's board. Their board is basically the Saudi ministry from top to bottom. You know, they own PIF. PIF is an extension to the Saudi government. Nothing happens in PIF without giving them the sign-off. You know, we are state-owned, probably by the wealthiest state in the world, who are worth absolute trillions. So they'll pull whatever financial levers they have to make this club the biggest club in world football. We'll be sitting here in, say, 3 years' time thinking, happy days, won the Premier League. It was nice knocking City off at that. They're not going to be able to compete with us.
And sorry, Sean, just to get into that, if Richard Masters is watching, allegedly.
No.
If Richard Masters is watching,
you know what
I don't care who owns this club. These
I don't
owners
either.
are better than 99% of the owners that are currently in this Premier League.
But it's people get so wound up about it. Like, you know, and the thing about it is you see all these things, the takeovers being reinvestigated, and so many high quality journalists going in, and I'm thinking, I'm some 2-bob Irish fella with like 10,000 followers, and like I know, and a lot of people know that they didn't sign off that there was separation. They signed off that they would act separately. Big difference. Basically, what happens is in the morning, if PIF dissolve, Newcastle cannot be owned by the state of Saudi Arabia. That's it. They cannot be owned by the state of Saudi Arabia. They can't say that Mohammed bin Salam has no say on Newcastle when he is the chairman of PIF. He is the owner of PIF. Of course, he has a fucking say. Like, you know, I'm not saying that he's sitting at home at the moment thinking, let's not bother signing McTominay. Like, but like, he is absolutely involved, all in, fingerprints all over. It's just that we can't be owned by Saudi Arabia as a country. You know, drink it up. You know, am I in agreement with it? I'd love if it didn't happen. I'd love if every club in the Premier League was owned by a Tony Bloom, who's a fan, investing his time and money and all this kind of stuff into the club. But they created a model. We just absolutely shattered it. You know, that's the problem.
I'll just put Michael Palmer's comment on here because I think it's quite timely. Hit the like and subscribe. We're not going anywhere. Lots of content coming. You know what to do.
More questions?
Oh, Daz has gone on mute. He disappeared. He's still on mute. What's going on?
I thought he's meant to be the tech guy.
Sorry, my mic disconnected. I knew I was not on mute. Still can't hear you. You still there?
Yeah.
Hello?
We're here.
Yeah. 1 second.
I'll carry on where you left off, mate.
Give us a few questions there, and we're trying to get to be fair to the people. That's an interesting one, isn't it? You know, it's a name that was mentioned to me last summer, and the club kind of backed away from the deal. Question, not really. Okay, this kind of goes back to what I said earlier. There's some people that they'll let them move and they'll see how they develop and then look at them again. You know, Per Shares is definitely somebody that they looked at, but they said, let's see how he develops kind of outside of Holland, and he's had a fantastic season. So he's definitely someone that's in amongst the list, but not near the top of it. Okay. Very solid journalists though, reporting that out of Italy, you know, not the ones that are kind of in the pocket of agents and stuff like that. You know, proper solid. I can't think of his name, but he's rock solid. Like,
apparently a good friend of Sven Botman's as well.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
Oh, Daz is
Daz.
For a second. He's just sorting his stuff out. ASM money swap deal for Rafael Leao?
No. I can't see it.
Definitely not. There's a couple of others. Well, a question for Sean. Not a fan's favourite, but doesn't he know if the club is still just in for Ekitike, or has that ship sailed?
Do you know, I know they rated him so highly. I think if Ekitike's people approach the club, I think they'd do a deal, being honest with you, because they were really, really, really keen to get him in. You know, you can't judge a player on a bad stint, like, you know, like it's just not worked from a PSG, you know, so don't judge him on that, you know, but he's definitely someone that I'd say if they came to the club saying that we want it, they'd probably do it, you know, but I haven't heard anything about him in a long time, but they were so invested in that transfer. I'd find it very hard to believe that they've totally walked away from it, you know, because I don't think the relationship between Ekitike and the club was as bad as it was, and I think they actually understand that he wanted to move to PSG as bio club. You know, let's go from there.
The play that you talked about earlier from AZ Alkmaar, was it Matheus Kirkes?
That's him, yeah. You know, I think he might go to Benfica, but I know Newcastle and another couple of Premier League clubs are really strongly looking at him, but he's meant to be an absolute unit, you know, but I think they might see how he develops in another country. And
he's only 19, young lad. Another player, Milinkovic-Savic.
I have nothing on it. You know, I know you have Transfer Checker, who, as I always say, is the most absolute rock solid person with transfer information, and he's going heavy on it, but I have nothing on it, being honest with you.
Okay. Jean-Claire Todibo.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd say he's very close at the top of the list. I think that when Newcastle do speak to Nice, which I believe will probably be very soon, I think both players will be in question.
Honestly, he would be the ideal for not replacement, but challenger for Fabian Schär. If we were to hopefully get that deal over the line, that would be an unbelievable signing. That's for sure.
He's somebody that I probably would have sent on to, I think, Pete, about a year and a half ago, I'd say. I was searching through my DMs there to see if I could pull it out. But he's definitely someone that they've been looking at a long time.
Definitely. Roger Ibanez, you talked about him before, actually.
Yeah. You know, nothing really coming from this side, as in the kind of English side of it, but a lot of reports pushing him in Italy. I know they scouted him extensively at Roma, and I know Roma had a kind of fancy on ASM as well for a long time. Mourinho was a big liker of ASM. But I think Ibanez hasn't had a great season, you know. But again, he's one of these players that you could see play as a right centre back or a right back without any issue. But I think they were hot on him, but I don't think they're as keen as they were right now.
Definitely, yeah. Just before I hand it back to Daz, another player we were linked with before, Michel Bakker.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. You know, like I've been told that the club are giving the information back that Diaby isn't the target. For me, from the profile I was given, Diaby doesn't really look like he fits that profile. But Newcastle have extensively watched Bayer Leverkusen. You know, I know there was a scout questioned after both the Celtic and Leipzig games because he was at them, and he was asked who he was scouting, and he said he was actually scouting a Celtic player when in fact he was actually watching Szoboszlai. So a lot of time there's a kind of red herring given to the media that, oh, who are you watching there? Are we seeing you at the game? Oh, watching Diaby. Is it Bakker or is it Tezebo? Is it, you know, there's multiple players there that they could be watching. So I don't know, but like for me, you know, applying logic to it.
Florian,
I can't see it. I can't see it.
There you go. Just like magic. A2. We're on the
ball.
But
Florian top player.
The thing with Bakker is that they went very heavy on him back in January last year. I think it was like 20 million they offered on him, you know, and they really, really wanted him in. The targets don't change, and he's had a fantastic season this year. Was he 6'2", fucking rocket fast, strong as an ox, great left foot, you know, can play left back, can play centre back, can play left midfield, you know. He's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Another one PSG let go early.
Jesus, man, it's crazy. You know, the Chelsea model and the PSG model is so flawed, isn't it, with all those young players that they leave go, you know. Like PSG could actually field a team of players that they let go and win the French league.
I suppose I was with Lee today and we were talking about one or two players, and I was talking about Moussa Diaby. He was like, he's maintained it for over a year now. He was like, he should have never left PSG, and that is a viable option. But he mentioned at the time, Michel Bakker.
But you know what, the thing about like Chelsea kind of like at times Chelsea will do good loans and they get decent money for the players, but PSG aren't even getting the good money for the players.
Exactly. Yeah.
Their loan system is terrible. You know. More questions?
Yeah.
Apologies for that earlier. My headset just died. That's why I couldn't hear what I didn't actually press the mute button. It just all died. Harry Kane, some of that. Would I get there? Sorry, no, not for me.
He's got it. Sure.
Sean isn't going to answer that one. Christopher Nkunku. So no, I know that the deal is meant to be done with Chelsea, but
it's done. Yeah,
but he's not. With them not getting a Champions League, would there be
a
chance?
It's done. It's agreed months ago. Yeah. But again, he's another one that had that gentleman's agreement, so that's why you wouldn't have seen the transfer confirmed, because they didn't actually have to release the clause. They've just agreed to pay it over an X amount of time.
Taribo at Nice. Jean-Claire, as we had a show about him.
We spoke about him there when you fell asleep, Daz, you know.
Oh yeah. Did he? Sorry. Yeah, and we did a bit of talking about him as well in one of our short little videos. Check that out if you've missed that. Yep. Back to the questions. There was a good one here where I had it. Yeah, I suppose there's a few questions on left backs. Who do you think will end up with left? We're going to definitely have to buy a left back. So who do you think we'll buy?
I don't like, as I said, everybody's saying Tierney, but it's not what I'm getting. You know, like a lot of solid sources saying that Tierney's done. You know, Truffert, a lot of injuries. You know, very injury hit at the moment, and Tierney, I think I'm ruling him out because of the same thing. I think the likes of a Lloyd Kelly, Bakker, you know, I think it'll be somebody of an athletic frame. They won't go for a like-for-like replacement with Trippier, but I can see him going for somebody, again, around that 6 foot mould, you know, athletic. Again, around that Kelly Bakker kind of mould, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to look at someone like that. But again, look, a lot of people saying Tierney.
All right. Maybe you covered it. Ekiteki. Would you go back in for him again? All this talk of PSG?
Again, I just said it earlier. I think
sorry.
I think that the club were so hard, they're so sold on him. I'd be surprised if he became available if they didn't go for him.
Okay, cool. Right, that's it more or less for the questions. I'm going to do the spinny wheel, Pete, and if you have anything else to work with, we could go with that as well. Sean, how long more can you stay for? Are you out?
I'm done, lads. I'm going to go.
Cool.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll do it again. Let's see what transpires from my utter nonsense over the next couple of weeks.
Of course.
Talk to you there, lads.
As always.
Cheers, Sean. Thanks a million for coming on.
Look.
Speak to you soon.
Nice one. So let me get that.
As always.
Yes, it is always. Let me get that spinny wheel because we'll forget it otherwise, or I will forget it and we won't get it done. So yes, it's back. So the members draw. You can see it. It's hard to see it. But there are 106 names in the hat. 106 members. There's one prize and one prize only, and it's for about £70, maybe just even over £70, around £70 mark. So we want to pick one member to win that prize, and then hopefully we can track them down. So and yeah, as I said, we actually have 5 of these to give away over the summer. So and we're going to add to it ourselves. So we just have to make decisions on that. But yeah, this is for the first members draw. If someone asked in the chat earlier about how you become a member, so you need to sign up, hit the join button, but you need to be doing that from a PC or laptop. It'll allow you to sign up then, and it's $1.99 a month. So best of luck to everyone. Here's the spinning wheel. Simon Newell is the winner. Congratulations, Simon. Congratulations. So if you are watching, Simon, contact us. Contact any of us or the Loaded on Twitter, and we will sort you out with that prize. And yeah, you've won £70 gift voucher to the Newcastle store, and you'll be able to buy whatever you want, but it'd be a nice time to buy yourself a new kit. So congratulations to Simon. So that's our first fully loaded transfer winner. So let me close that. Yeah, just froze on me now. I'll hand it back to you, Pete.
No, you're not froze. You're just talking really fast on the screen.
Yes, my connection.
It's catching up now. I think it's caught up now. But no, Simon Newell, make sure you contact us. What should we say, Daz? Maybe a week or so. Yeah. You don't hear back, then we have to put it back in for a double whammy. Spin again. So but congratulations, Simon, on your win. So then maybe we'll just let people know, and I'll flick back because I don't think I put it on this tab today, but we'll flick back to my other tab and tell people what's happening tomorrow. So tomorrow at 7:30, we're back again with another fully loaded transfer show, and we're back with Antonio Mango, and he's going to focus. Well, as I said last night, we gave him a little task. You give him a little task, Pete, to focus on 4 specific areas. So a left back, right centre back, centre midfield, and a right or left winger. And looking at the market, looking at the players that he's scouted, and especially the youth market, who Newcastle could potentially look at in those areas. So that'll be another interesting show tomorrow night. Definitely, we don't stop. We keep going with all transfer information. And look, we're going to get opinions from lots of different people over the course of the summer months. So keep in touch with all things Loaded Mag, NUFC. Great to see that we've got at least 25 new subscribers since the show's been on tonight. So massive thanks to all of you subscribing. Well on the way to 6K. So if you can, help us along the way. And if you haven't subbed, click that sub right now and come and join us. That's for sure.
I'm going to give a shout out to the sponsors, Pete, as well, because that's another thing I would forget. So shout out to theradiatorshed.com and Russ. And if you're looking for any kind of radiators, Russ is the man to sort you out as he put myself and Pete in jail. Here's just a little sample of what's available. And there's more pictures to come. He's working on something Newcastle themed. So that will be coming very soon. Some brilliant radiators there if you're looking for them. Someone who needs radiators in their house or building a house, and there's Russ there. He's the one on the right. Yeah, and also Russ's other business, the Install Works, will get that sorted out for you. They'll get it all fitted up. Also, a shout out to H2O Bathroom Design Co., the Northeast's largest supplier of Velcro and Botch bathroomware. Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established, run by the family. Get down to the showroom on 11th Avenue, Team Valley Estate, Gateshead. And yeah, new pictures. Some quality kit here in the showroom of H2O Bathroom. So yeah, don't go there if you go there, you're going to be spending big money. But yeah, do go there, I should say, and make sure you mention us, and you will get the discount via H2O Bathroom Design Co. as well. But yeah. Quality bathrooms there on show, and quality radiators with Russ. That was it from me, Pete. Anything else you wanted to cover before we sign off for the night?
Well, there's a few comments in here that I just wanted to kind of address really. First of all, Scott Cohen from all the way from Las Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
Yeah, Vegas, baby. Love to go over there, hopefully one day. But great to see Scott supporting the channel all the way from Las Vegas. Says your channel is brilliant. Tuning in from Las Vegas. Great to have you.
Yes. And, I have a Vegas story. I was, when I was in Vegas before, I watched the Newcastle game, and it was Newcastle versus Man City. And I know Stephen Taylor did something stupid in that match. I remember going after 20 minutes ago, screw this. We're like, we're so far behind. I just said, I don't walk away, because it was very hard to find someone that was showing. It was on really early in the morning as well. But yeah. Great watching the tune from Vegas.
Yeah, I'd love to go. Hopefully one day. But great to see so many people from around the world tuning into Loaded Mag NUFC. And Mark Todd said from the comments in our conversation earlier, Loaded Mag NUFC, definitely the best channel out here. Well-balanced opinions. No bullshit. And the lads and lasses in the chat are always first class. And massive thanks to you, Todd, and everyone else who come and join us. Like, we've had 600 plus watching at one point live tonight, which is just amazing numbers, and it just goes to show we like to talk football. We like to get different opinions. Some opinions people like, some opinions from our guests people like, some people don't. But we like to put them out there because we like to have a good variation, and we like to bring channels together. As Dad said earlier, it was one of our targets is when we first came together. So it's something we'll enjoy doing, and we'll continue to do, and we'll stay true to ourselves.
Half the chat is after getting married in Vegas. I see Lisa and Michael as well. Not together, but they got married in Vegas. Wow. But yeah, you know what, Pete? I think people deserve a little treat as we sign off for the night. I think they didn't get it at the start, but they're going to get it now. It's time for a little goosebumps. Good night, everybody. See you later. See you tomorrow.
I get those goosebumps, baby. Get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those times, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time